Hi and welcome. My name is Catherine Henry, and I want to talk to you today about getting back to business in a contact free economy. What does that look like? Now, those of you who know follow me know that I specialize in XR, extended realities, both for enterprise to entertainment, so the entire spectrum. And I wanted to talk to you today. I know that we spend a lot of time speaking in jargon about specific use cases and specific technologies, but really nobody's given us a holistic overview of what that means. And now more than ever, we really need to understand what that means because it's very difficult to survive under the current circumstances. And so we want to think about how we survive in a contact-free society and utilize many of the virtualization tools that we have. And so I thought before we sort of go into a lot of detail about specific use cases, we can give you the backup, give you a big overview of where we are and how this could work not only for your business, but also potentially for your career. So let's get going. So back to business. We are now in an era of new technologies and new opportunities, but specifically I wanted to talk to you about some of the uh, some of the challenges that we're facing now. So everything from human resources and the challenges being productive in an era and creating profits in an era of difficult returns. And I'm sorry, I'm just trying to figure out all the screens. There's a lot happening here. I'm going to just try to hide that so you can get back to this screen. So there are a lot of changes happening right now with human resources challenges on the one side, where workers are really concerned about their safety and businesses are very deeply concerned about their profits. Communication collaboration is very difficult as well as we struggle to understand what's happening and how we can overcome all of these challenges trying to upload and adapt new technologies and still continue business with our vendors and our suppliers and everyone facing chaos at the same time. Maintenance and repair work is being put on hold or just isn't being done at all. So IT, factories, plants, and all of those types of environments really aren't being surveyed as much as they ordinarily are. And so the maintenance is getting lost as people are told to stay home. So business operations generally, whether it's upstream from manufacturing and production to downstream point of sale, all of this has been dramatically disrupted and nobody really has much visibility. So overall, what we're looking at is a big conflict between profitability, safety, and survival. But what do you do when humanity itself is the risk? This is when we come to contact-free economy, and I want you to remember that term because you heard it here first. Okay, so the solution really lies in the virtualization tools, and I have created a website that shows all of the different tools, not a website, but a white paper that shows all the different tools available to you, and it outlines how they can come together to help solve specific problems for specific industries. So I've mapped that out and I've also created the white paper with use cases so that you can understand how they work in better depth. But again, this is going to be an overview so you can start thinking about some of the key considerations that we'll be facing over the coming weeks and months. Andrew Yang, I'm a big fan of his. He opined recently that we're trying to fit, 10 years of technological advancement over 10 weeks. And I feel that very much to be true. We're all working in XR around the clock, trying to learn as much as we can, share as much as we can, and share as much as we can with the broader public because things are moving quickly. We have many new resources and platforms. And now we're actually going through a stage of consolidation of these resources and platforms. So expect a lot of M&A activity over the coming weeks. But and so speaking about the platforms, we expect a big announcement on HTC. We will have one of the representatives here with us on Wednesday, so perhaps she'll be able to serve the tea on that. And we're also cool. We met with Justin Bolognino of Meta, META, last week, who talked about his new platform for creatives, which is potentially the new LinkedIn for creative technologists and XR specialists. So a lot of exciting things. Finally, another platform that we've been looking at is one that's traditionally been used for games, and that's called Steam. And so as we look to house our new XR technology, we have to put it somewhere. And so the content has got to be housed there. It's traditionally used, as I said, for games, but increasingly VR spaces and other interactive spaces are housed on that platform. Of course, YouTube several years ago said it allowed for uploading and sharing 3D content. It hasn't really taken off, and we're looking more for like a Vimeo, so for professionals who want to share their 3D content, but maybe something bigger that's really dedicated. And I think that's what's going to be different. But as we do it, we're also going to find new stars and new types of content in the same way that when the iPhone was first introduced, that nobody could imagine that you would call up a total stranger and ask them to pick you up, and en route pick up another perfect stranger and then deliver you to your respective destinations. An entire ecosystem was born with the iPhone, and that was, it seems like ages ago, but it was 2003. And so now we find ourselves 15 years later in an entirely new age. Forget digital. It's all about virtual right now. And the new exciting thing is that presents a lot of opportunities, not only for content, but also for your career, because there have got to be people manning all of these new technologies and all the entire ecosystem of companies behind it. Speaking of the ecosystem, I wanted to give you an overview too of what the XR market looks like. Now, a lot of people will ask me, VR, AR, is that arcades? Do you work with video arcades? And so the perception is really limited. People think about gaming when they think about VR, and they're quite surprised when I tell them, is this a $20 billion industry? Moreover, it is growing rapidly and has a 5-year compound annualized growth rate of 77%. So it's not small and it's not slow. It's moving very quickly, and it's moving apace with the rest of technologies over time as we begin to adapt it. What the difference is, in this case, it's not consumer driven. It's been driven primarily by enterprise. And so a lot of the technologies that we'll be talking about are already being used, but they're being used for manufacturing, or they're being used in an oil and gas field, or they're being used in Walmart. And we're really not seeing it in real life. It's behind the scenes, but increasingly we're going to see it as a central part of our working lives, and as our personal lives, as by extension, since we'll be social distancing for some time to come. So where are what are the key use cases for some of these technologies? Most of us have been talking about VR because that's the obvious use case for communication and collaboration right now. We need some work tools that will help us get through this, to give us a sense of presence and to be able to look each other in the face, albeit virtually, but to see one another and have that sense and have distance disappear. And depending on what you've seen, I just want to let you know that the avatars are very realistic. And sometimes you can even see there are scanning tools that allow you to create a realistic representation of yourself, even based on just a photo, and transport you into the room. And so the technologies are advancing very, very quickly. It's funny though, because these technologies have been around for a long time. You can see here that the industries in which VR is most useful has been the second one. Well, first one is gaming, obviously. I think porn is not on here, but let's not discuss that. Healthcare and medical devices. Now, healthcare and medical devices, VR has been around for healthcare since the 1980s, and it's been used very actively in rehabilitation. Why? Because it has a deep psychological impact. And if you're really interested in psychology and the use of VR, please look into Mel Slater. His work with this studying the impact of embodiment in VR is really groundbreaking stuff. I met him in Barcelona about a couple of years ago, and he's just a fascinating person. Also, great sense of humor. So I highly recommend anything that he's done, or even his presentations online. But the fact is that humans absorb a lot of information, and this mind-body connection between this technology and the physical being is deep. So much so that we actually absorb information better in VR than we do in real life. So imagine traditional tuition methods in school, writing on a chalkboard or reciting things. Those are effective, but not nearly as effective as in VR. In fact, there are a number of studies that show that people who use VR outperform their counterparts who don't. How? Well, it's basically because, again, their retention rates are much greater, and also it stimulates real life learning. So, obviously, if somebody tells you that a flame is hot and it's going to hurt you, you won't quite remember it as much as if you put your hand in front of the flame and learn by yourself. Sometimes some lessons are better learned indirectly, shall we say. So, it's not surprise then that healthcare and education are our first use cases. And I'm going to throw out some numbers here. One case showed that the retention of specific lessons were 1 year afterwards by regular tuition and VR. Those who did the traditional method retained only 20% of the information, and 1 year later, those who had learned in VR retained 80%. So there are a lot of statistics like that. Please have a look at some of the VR training cases. You'll see many of them, and they're very, very impressive. So no wonder enormous companies like Walmart are investing so heavily. But we've also seen this being used a lot and with great effect with medical, within the healthcare practices, especially with haptics, which simulate the sensation of entering the body, and the scientific replicas for all sorts of an entire catalog of use cases are available today. For education, less so. So there's an entire opportunity to create content for education for every single, think about the great courses or master classes or TED Talks. All of that content, none of it's in VR, none of it's in 3D. And even you can import it into 3D, but it's going to be a flat screen because the assets just really can't be combined. So there's a very interesting opportunity there for any entrepreneurs who are looking to create custom content for these highly specialized fields. I would say too that manufacturing and automation, we're not really seeing the use case of AR, of augmented reality. The glasses are in heavy use we are using AR as opposed to VR. The glasses are in heavy use on factory line production, also digital doubles, basically scanning or recreating a machine that we can then, or prototype, that we can all work on, collaborate on jointly. There are headsets and there are programs that will allow us to use two different headsets. You can be in the Magic Leap and somebody else can be in a virtual reality headset. But I think, further down, we're seeing different use cases depending on the industry. Again, I would refer to the white paper to give you a little more clarity. But if you have questions, always feel free to reach out. The important thing to remember is that we have vast use cases, and all of these things are, this new media is going to arrive on new platforms, and we're going to need to understand how to access those, and also how to use those ourselves, how to create that content. So understanding the platforms is fundamental. What sort of platforms are they? What's their capacity? How do you access them? Can I do it on a PC? Can I use it in the mobile device? Do I need one of those really fancy, expensive headsets? Can I send cardboard out to all of my clients? What is the onboarding process and what is the friction? We in the industry talk about friction, meaning like that moment between me uploading an app and opening it, or not uploading an app at all. I don't really want to do that. And that's really a big problem with augmented reality, is a lot of people don't feel like the benefit of, or the payoff has to be super obvious. It was very much obvious when we saw Pokemon Go several years ago. People got that. They understood it, and it was very, very exciting. The payoff was obvious. But if you're asking them to go through all of that work and charge their batteries and, to spend a precious 3 seconds of their time, it had better be worth it. So it's not surprising that we're seeing some significant investments into augmented and virtual reality for the telephone. Apple just made 2 recent acquisitions. One was Next VR, and the other one was an AR company, and that was just 2 weeks ago. We've seen Facebook has already made significant investments in Quest. So all the big players are in the space. Some people say, well, Google's not in it anymore. Well, Google's not in the headsets anymore, but it doesn't mean they're out of the game. Trust me, virtualization is here to stay. And the platforms are going to be the next Netflix and YouTube and Instagram, but they're going to be very different. You have to interact with them very differently. You cannot create a banner ad in VR. There's no reason. I mean, imagine if you're sitting in a room, a three-dimensional room, and suddenly a flat poster floats through your room. That would be weird. And there's a reason for that because it's very much lifelike in there. So you don't want to introduce elements unless, of course, that's the theme. I studied virtual reality at the New York Film Academy a good 10 years after getting my MBA. My focus was always in marketing. My career has been in marketing and business development. And so when I when I took the course, I was thinking about how to create advertisements, and that was one of the first things I did. And it was great fun to see what worked in VR. But as an industry, we're all going to need to work ourselves up that learning curve. So the sooner you get your arms around that and understand the platforms and the technologies, you'll be way ahead of the game. Because trust me, I'm on a lot of conferences and I receive a lot of information about marketing globally, and I'm just not seeing a lot of conversations about this. But mark my words, it's going to be a big conversation. So one of the trends I've noticed is post-maximalism, and I believe that will work very, very well in these hyper-realistic environments because, you know, it I think that people are gone are the days when people are really interested and invested in the materialism of a world which is no longer our reality. Watching people squabble unnecessarily, or angry housewives, or going through the Kardashians' third kitchen on the same floor isn't really going to be as interesting anymore. Some of the media trends I've noticed recently are the fact that Jimmy Kimmel is broadcasting live from home with his wife manning the camera. I'm surprised the studio didn't give them a little bit better equipment, but then again, collaboration and communication tools, as we mentioned before. But it's interesting to see how warmly his work has been received by the general public, and they say it's natural. We like it. He feels accessible. So we have to think too about how to convey these emotions in these new technologies. Chris Milk, who's a director of a studio that long time ago created a film called Clouds Over Cedra, and that was for the United Nations. And once they aired it, they gained donations $2 million over what they'd requested because people felt so attached emotionally to the people who were in the film. And it was virtual reality, so they could look around. They had agency. They were able to connect with these people and connect with their plight. And so as a result, he named VR the empathy machine. It's enormously powerful in conveying emotions. And so if you're able to harness those emotions effectively, then you will be very successful. Another thing to realize in VR is that we are going to have a society in which we will be present in other realities, but there will also be other icons in our realities that are not real. What does that mean? It means chatbots, basically. Chatbots will be used both online and offline because, let's face it, businesses cannot be everywhere right now. They don't have a physical presence. They're having difficulty collaborating amongst themselves, much less with the general public, and even with service providers and clients. And so therefore, chatbots are going to be very prevalent. Everyone's going to have an avatar in the same way they have a Gmail account or a Facebook account or a Twitter account. After a while, everybody gets on board. And first, I think people will want hyper-realistic scenes. They'll want hyper-realistic environments. So, for example, the in real life engagements will be held in very realistic stadiums or conference centers or meeting rooms. But increasingly, I think we're going to see a departure not only from avatars to, say, more creative. So if you want to express the creativity, it might be that you're having a normal meeting, but then the art department walks in and one's a dragon, one's a unicorn, and one is and one is something completely different. So we'll see the reflection of corporate culture in several of these avatars. And so you need to think about, what does my corporate culture look like? What does it sound like? If I were to meet this, my corporation embodied, what would they be? And would they be different people? Mind you, they can all speak any language you like, so that's not very difficult. But you really need to think about how you want to do that. And I expect that the use cases will be broad. There'll be receptionists and educators, and there'll be psychoanalysts, there'll be legal and marketing specialists, news anchors, you name it. There are apps that will use chatbots quite successfully, and even the ones for psychoanalysis. You think I'm kidding? There is a program that's been in use for some years, and it shows that actually people are more willing to make their confessions to these chatbots that are AI enabled, and they feel comforted by them. So I believe that you will be seeing a lot of these technologies in virtually every aspect of our life and our society going forward. Because we are living in a contact-free economy. Yes, I said it. Contact-free economy. Let that soak in. You heard that term coined here first because it's mine. Anyway, the contact-free economy is all about efficiency gains with XR and automation, and it's capitalizing on the fact that we have to achieve these gains, these efficiency gains, because businesses are struggling now. So automation is the natural response, for better or for worse. But we're not going to address the social implications. We're going to really focus on the benefits to society at the moment, and those are in manufacturing, product and transport. We've already seen some of these things in action. We've seen pizza deliveries, contactless pizza delivery. Basically, you just get on the phone, and then when you get there, you put in the QR code, or you put in the secret code, or maybe there's AI or facial recognition. All of these things are going to evolve. Maintenance and repair. Again, I can have an AR app that replicates the physical object, that it's a digital double. Here's on my phone, and I can screen it, and I can see where the trouble points are, or I can get automatic responses, or even one of the chatbots can talk me through diffusing a bomb or whatever it is that I need to do. And finally, in real life interactions. And this is the hard part, because we've lost $20 billion, not only in the film industry so far this year, or projected for this year, but also $20 billion in lost income from all the conferences that have been canceled all around this year. And I, for one, was really looking forward to South by Southwest and Tribeca. So the good news is that we do have VR platforms for that, like Engage, which may or may not have been acquired. And, virtual stadiums and concert halls. So imagine Madison Square Garden, or, I don't know, football station as a football field. Sorry, not into sports. But you go there and you can experience this firsthand. And actually, you'll have lots of information and statistics. How many runs they did, or how many whatever they scored, all of this on a dashboard in front of you. I mean, this is paradise for the real sports enthusiast. There are really exciting ways that we can capitalize on this. And, when it comes to automation and jobs, rest assured, there are still many, many positions that will evolve as a result of this contact-free economy. But before we get to that, I just want to tell you that, the incremental savings and cost per employee will be compounded by combining several of these technologies, because some enable others. So if you've got AI, you can do 3D printing, and create prototypes and real life size machinery that would be very costly to construct in a real world environment. And people can learn on these things and train on them, but without making the risk of, say, being out, in doing a military simulation with real military equipment. Same thing with aviation, same thing with oil and gas. You can put people in highly pressurized situations without running the risk of either contagion or physical harm to oneself, or harm to the equipment. And additionally, you can, if you work with a virtualization strategist, somebody who really knows XR, they can help you guide your way through all the spectrum of different different tools that will be available to you, and how you can use them across the entire value chain of your business. And that's fundamentally the advantage of using these across the company. And my special thanks to David Aboud, who did a great job with his report. So let's back to the juicy stuff. Some of you are really thinking right now, what's happening with my company? What's happening with my job? Is my skill set enough? Because if I've got to compete now against hundreds of thousands of people who are looking for jobs right now, how can I stand out? Well, here's how. These days, a lot of companies are giving away free lessons online. So if you're looking and you want to get your skills up and you have pretty good coding skills, then you can learn Unity and the Unreal platform that'll help you create 3D assets. Basically, everything has yet to be created. There's a dearth of content. So if you can learn the basics right now, it's a great time. Google has a lot of information about AI online, and it's actually great fun. And I highly encourage you to check that out. So machine learning, computer programming, engineers, robotics, natural language programming, all of these things all these areas are in great demand. Similarly, 3D artists, if you are an artist and you feel that this is an area that you'd like to stay in, then up your skills. Now is a great time. It's not just Adobe, but as I said, 3D graphics are in high demand. And furthermore, you can create your own custom range of off-the-shelf assets that can be purchased online, again on a different platform. And then and some of these things cost $20 and $30 per use. And so if I am building, say, an AR walk, or as we did with the New York City Tech Creatives, we did an AR art walk, and we would go through this entire catalogs of assets. And it was interesting to see how few there were. So it could be everything from clothes and hats and shoes to cars and other things. Create those assets online, and then you can just reap the revenues. So so that's an opportunity. But honestly, I really believe that the creative technologists are going to be the rock stars of the future. The reason is that they understand the technology really well, but they're also pushing the boundaries of technology. And as head of the New York City Tech Creatives in New York, it's a collaborative of nearly 3,000 people. I see some of the most exciting work all the time that just awes me and makes my passion for this space even that much greater. The creative potential is enormous. And that's going to be what's going to push out the industry generally, is having exposure to these highly talented people. And platforms like the one I mentioned before, Unreality, will help you access them and to see their work firsthand. So that's really exciting. And finally, you need XR strategists, people who understand the entire panorama and are able to point out the things that you need now, the most critical tools, as opposed to the nice tools, the things that might be good to have. Because let's face it, now is not the time to waste money. We really need to be very careful about our capital expenditures and use our resources wisely. VR and AR specialists are very good, of course, and especially for training programs. I mean, we need, if you're looking at the company the size of Walmart and you're trying to launch a training program, that's no easy feat. So having a really skilled VR trainer will be of tremendous help. And then finally, you also need experienced artists and XR marketing specialists. The most important thing is to create a virtualization strategy and to take control, because you have months, not years. Unfortunately, as I said, we're trying to cram 10 years of work into 10 weeks because the pressure is on. Businesses are flailing, and we really need to set a course for success. So if that's what you want to do, you need to get a virtualization strategy, and you need to get a virtualization strategist on board who can help guide you through the many options and select the ones that are right for your business and your industry, and also who has partnerships with people who can implement. Because it's one thing to say, I definitely need to implement AI and 3D printing and have a whole host of things, but then not know who to call. So XR strategists will probably have a pretty good list of people that they believe who are competent enough to deliver your needs and do it in a timely basis. at budget. Now, there's going to be a lot of competition for the very, very best people. We in XR, we're always talking. It's the same group of people, and we always share the same resources. That doesn't mean there aren't really good startups. It doesn't mean there's not even a good independent person who's capable of replicating some of these technologies. But you need somebody that you know can deliver on the investment. So that it's something that you look back on in 3 years and 5 years, and sure, maybe you need to upgrade, but you're really satisfied that you've taken the right first steps and you're headed in the right direction. So in summary, what we have now are urgent pressures to economize, and we've got to do it quickly. We've really got dramatic structural changes happening in the world around us, and let's just take control of what we can. And so I specifically suggest that we start thinking about how we can just take action and control of our businesses and of our careers, utilizing the tools that we have at our disposal today. They exist. All you need is a virtualization strategy that will help you get up and running. And I believe sincerely that you will be back in business and successful in no time. So that is the end of my presentation. I would be happy to take your questions. I look forward to your comments, and I invite you back to join us on Wednesdays at 3 p.m. on my channel at LinkedIn. And please feel free if you have a group question, or if you want a presentation about a specific industry, I'd be happy to share some use cases with you and help you on your learning journey as we all struggle and work hard to get back to business. Thank you so much, and be well.